Hello, my name is Michael Curtis, and I will be talking to you about the three strikes laws in California. The idea of establishing the three strikes laws came about mainly after the murder of Polly Klaas, I think that's how you say her name, in 1993 by a paroled felon named Richard Davis. Davis had a heavy crime record that included theft, burglary, kidnapping, marijuana possession, and much more. And when word got out to the public that a convicted felon was the murderer, they decided that there needed to be a change in the prison system. The Three Strikes Law was passed in California in 1994 in attempts to fix this problem and prevent criminals with records from getting out and committing more crimes. The idea was that by creating a standard amount of prison time of 25 years to life, that people would be less likely to commit crimes, or at least stop after committing two. Since 1994, 26 states have adopted a variety of three strikes laws. However, California is still presumably credited to have the harshest form of punishment. My major claim is that the three strikes laws in California is harming the state. My first supporting point for this is that the three strikes laws violates the Constitution. My second supporting claim is that the law reduces citizens' confidence in the judicial system. And finally, my third supporting point is that three strikes laws is overutilizing substantial resources. So for my first point, the three strikes laws is in violation of the Constitution in that it breaks both the 6th and 8th Amendments. The 8th Amendment states that excessive bail shall not be required, nor excessive fines imposed, nor cruel and unusual punishment inflicted. The three strikes law, however, goes against this because it does cause cruel and unusual punishment. For example, the most common charges against third strike criminals are drugs, theft, and burglary, which are all nonviolent crimes. But due to the three strikes law, these people are subjected to at least 25 years in prison. The purpose of the three strikes laws is to get dangerous criminals off the streets, but in many cases, it is only putting the nonviolent ones away for long periods of time. An example of a nonviolent criminal that was put away for an excessive amount of time is Leandro Andrade. Andrade was caught in 1995 shoplifting children's videos on 2 separate occasions within a 2-week period. The videos were each approximately worth $1.60, which would normally cause this crime to fall under the category of petty theft, which is anything that's under $400. However, he was given 50 years to life in prison because these were his last 2 strikes, and normally you can only get up to 6 months for a petty theft. On top of this infringement, the three strikes law also violates the 6th Amendment, which states that everyone is entitled to a fair trial by jury. The three strikes law ensures that everyone, regardless of their 3 crimes, is sentenced for the same minimum basis of 25 years. These laws prevent people from getting a fair chance in court to have their cases looked at and have their prison terms determined by a judge. Another problem that arises is that this could actually lead to preventing people from getting their evidence against them fairly analyzed by a judge and or jury, and they may be convicted just for having a previous record. This leads me to my second point, that the three strikes law is harming the state because it reduces confidence in the judicial system. Because the law predetermines the amount of time a person is to spend in prison, judges are losing their authority. Before the law, judges had the ability to determine a person's sentence based on how dangerous or how bad the crime was that the criminal committed. If this was the case, then people such as Andrade could have been given a lighter sentence due to the low severity of their crime. However, instead they are subject to at least 25 years in prison. In 2009, there was a study created by the Three Strikes and You're Out site that states that since the adopting of the law in 1994, that the number of violent crimes have been significantly lowered. In 1993, the year before the Three Strikes law was passed, the number of violent crimes committed was 336,000. In 2007, the number of total violent crimes dropped to 191,000. While the rate of violent crimes drastically dropped, the number of people in prison has significantly increased over the years. In 1993, the total number of incarcerated criminals was 119,000, but in 2007, the total was 171,000. This is an odd statistic because it shows that while the number of violent crimes have decreased by about 43%, the number of people in prison has increased by about 43%, which leads to the inference that more people are being imprisoned for lesser violent crimes due to the three-strikes law. This leads me to my last point, that the three-strikes laws in California is overutilizing substantial resources. First off, it is overusing the amount of space we have available in our prisons. Prisons are for violent people that are not suitable members of society and therefore are in need of long-term rehabilitation. The three-strikes law, however, is causing prisons to become places to send nonviolent lawbreakers in attempts to prevent them from one day becoming dangerous criminals. The problem with this logic is that we do not have the space for all these prisoners and for the violent offenders, and so by sending every one of these felons to prison for a minimum of 25 years, all we are doing is creating a lot of overcrowding. The other problem is that the more prisoners we have and add to our institutions, the more money it takes to pay for them and their new facilities. According to the article 1 in 100 Behind Bars in America 2008, in 2007, California spent $8.8 billion on its state correctional facilities. California now has the second largest prison population and yet pays more than double of any other state. The reason behind this is that, unlike most states, California is forced to pay a set amount of its inmates' medical and dental care, along with other necessities. For this reason, the three-strikes law is just making the cost worse, because it is forcing people to stay in prison for longer periods of time. In conclusion, the three-strikes law is harming California because it violates the Constitution, it reduces confidence in the judicial system, and it utilizes substantial resources. Thank you.
All right, the proposition is stated clearly. The supporting points are also identified clearly. The signposting is pretty smooth for the most part, so it's easy to follow. All the structural things are okay. On the evidence, you've got one example that you point to, some hypotheticals on how the records might be used. I think that that's perhaps a little bit speculative. I think you need a lot better testimony from authorities about the way the three-strikes law is being utilized, the issue of judges' discretion, and the impact that it has on the criminal justice system. Some of the inferences that you're making are probably they might be valid, but I'm not sure they're valid based on the evidence that you presented. For example, you've got the one piece of data where you're talking about how we've had a decrease in the number of crimes and an increase in the number of people who are going to jail. I'm sure that an advocate of three strikes would say, yeah, that's why you have the decrease in the number of crimes, because you put more people in jail. The one thing I think that's missing from the argument in any of the sections that you have is the information about the number of people who are sentenced under three strikes, particularly in California. There seems to be a large presupposition that all of the people above that 149,000 level, I guess, that you cited at one point, that they must all be being sentenced under three strikes, and I think that that's a strange inference to make. On the constitutional issues, there aren't any references to court rulings. Since we've had this in place for 17 years now, or 16 years now, I'm sure there have been some court rulings on this, and so your data on this point is, it's basically an argument, a claim, without any proof on it, except some hypotheticals. So you need to do a little bit better on that point. All right, I thought the presentation was pretty good. The pacing's about right. Maybe a little bit too much reading, but you had a very nice summary at the end also. Thank you.